What if the main justification for America escalating the Vietnam War was based on a total lie? In August 1964, something happened in the Gulf of Tonkin that gave the US government the green light to go all in. Today, we're diving into how this whole story was built on a foundation of distortion, leading to one of the longest and most painful conflicts in American history.
Usually you save the big reveal for the end. Not today. We're going to start with the bombshell conclusion, because wow, this quote, it's from an actual NSA historian looking back at the agency's own secret files. He's saying, point blank, that the evidence they had, the real evidence, showed the key event that kicked off the war, well, it just never happened.
And this isn't some fringe conspiracy theory. Nope. What people had suspected for years was finally, officially confirmed in the 2000s, when the NSA finally declassified a mountain of documents. The truth was buried for almost 40 years. So the question is, how did a phantom attack, a ghost, drag America deeper into such a devastating war? To really get the consequences, we first have to understand how the lie was even built. So let's break down this deception piece by piece, starting with a super tense situation that kind of set the stage for everything. Okay, so let's set the scene. The year is 1964. The whole world is a Cold War pressure cooker, and Southeast Asia, specifically the Gulf of Tonkin, is about to become the flashpoint.
Right, so the Cold War was in full swing. Global tensions were sky high. Vietnam was a country literally torn in two, North versus South, and the U.S., led by President Lyndon Johnson and his Defense Secretary Robert McNamara, was already deeply involved. They were backing South Vietnam and, this is crucial, they were supporting secret naval raids against North Vietnam's coast. So, let's be really clear, the U.S. was not a neutral observer here. It was an active player.
This secret program even had a name, O-Plan 34A. It was a whole operation run by the Department of Defense and the CIA. And yeah, South Vietnamese sailors were the ones on the boats, but make no mistake, the US was pulling all the strings, giving them gear, and gathering intel. The key takeaway here is this. When North Vietnam saw US warships in the area, they didn't see a neutral party, they saw an adversary. And that brings us right to the heart of the incident. See, it wasn't just one event. It was two completely different episodes that happened over 3 days, and those two events were deliberately mashed together to create a totally false story of aggression. So after a month of these secret raids ramping up, things finally came to a head. On August 2nd, the destroyer USS Maddox was, in fact, attacked by North Vietnamese torpedo boats. It was a real naval skirmish. They fought back. No one denies that happened. But the really controversial part comes 2 days later, on August 4th, when the Maddox and another destroyer, the USS Turner Joy, report they're under attack again.
And this is where the story gets completely twisted. I mean, just look at the difference. The August 2nd incident, it's a real attack. They saw the enemy boats. There was a real firefight. It was undeniable. Now compare that to August 4th. It was a stormy night, visibility was zero, and no one actually saw any enemy ships. The crew was inexperienced, and the radar was likely just picking up what they called freak weather effects. It was pure chaos, not combat.
This is where the story goes from just being confusing to being a deliberate deception. The sailors and pilots who were actually there, on the scene, they figured out pretty quickly that something was wrong. But their doubts, they never made it into the official story that Washington started telling.
You don't have to take my word for it. Listen to Commander James Stockdale. He was one of the Navy pilots flying right over the destroyers that night. His assessment was blunt. I had the best seat in the house. There were no PT boats there. He said he saw nothing but black water and American firepower. He was the eyewitness, and he was crystal clear that no attack was happening.
The doubt wasn't just coming from the air either. The commander of the USS Maddox himself, Captain John Herrick, sent this urgent message back to his bosses. He talks about freak weather effects and over-eager sonarmen, and he strongly advises a complete evaluation before any further action. The man in charge, right there on the scene, was telling Washington to hit the brakes.
So what did they do? They ignored him. The Johnson administration was itching for a reason to show American strength and go bigger in Vietnam, so they grabbed those initial panicked reports and ran with them. They just completely ignored all the follow-up messages that urged caution. Why? Because they finally had the story they wanted, a story of unprovoked aggression, and they were not going to let the facts get in the way.
And if there's any doubt that President Johnson knew the reports were shaky, just listen to this. In a private remark he later said of the August 4th incident, "Hell, those damned stupid sailors were just shooting at flying fish."
So, publicly, he sold it to the American people as a clear act of war. But privately, he dismissed it as a goofy mistake.
So, what's the result of all this? Armed with this made-up crisis, the administration moved with lightning speed to turn it into an incredible amount of military power.
I mean, we are talking mere hours after the so-called attack, and long before Captain Herrick's doubts could even be looked into, President Johnson is on national television. He tells the American people that U.S. ships have been attacked on the high seas and that America has to respond. And just like that, the narrative was set in stone.
Just 3 days later, Congress passes the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution. Now, this wasn't technically a declaration of war, but let's be real, it was. It gave the president the power to take all necessary measures. That phrase is so vague, it was basically a blank check to wage war in Vietnam however he wanted to.
And Johnson knew exactly how much power he'd just been handed. He privately joked that the resolution was like Grandma's nightshirt. It covers everything. And with that blank check, the floodgates were thrown wide open, and the full-scale Americanization of the Vietnam War was on.
The war would rage on for nearly another decade, changing both America and Vietnam forever. But the truth about how it all got started, well, that would stay hidden for a whole lot longer.
This was the cost for America. 58,220 soldiers killed, every single one of them a life cut short in a conflict that was escalated under completely false pretenses.
And for the Vietnamese people, the cost was just exponentially higher. An estimated 3 million people, soldiers and civilians, were killed. The scale of the human tragedy is almost impossible to wrap your head around.
And for decades, the real story behind that staggering cost stayed hidden. Then, in 2005, those declassified NSA documents laid it all bare. They confirmed, yes, the August 2nd attack was real. But they stated unequivocally that the August 4th attack never happened. The report showed a clear pattern of deception. Intelligence was twisted, signal intercepts were deliberately altered, and any report that concluded no attack was simply buried.
So let's just be absolutely clear about what this means. The Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, the legal document that gave the green light for almost a decade of brutal warfare, was based on a lie. A war that divided a nation and left scars that still haven't healed was launched into its deadliest phase because of a phantom attack on a stormy night.
You know, the story of the Gulf of Tonkin isn't just history. It's a huge, flashing warning sign about the power of information and the incredible danger of unchecked authority. And it leaves us with a pretty chilling question. If a single, distorted story could reshape the world back then, what narratives are shaping our world right now?